Hello, everyone. This is Brandon K. Hedgepeth, and I wanted to welcome you all here to the Tansson Talks show. I'm just so excited to speak with you all here today. For those of you who don't know me, I am a lifelong learner communicator, and of course, your friend, and I'm so glad to be here with you all. And so, without further ado, for this 11th episode of the Tansson Talks show, please welcome my guest today, Dr. Darwin Mills. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Brandon.
Hey, of course, I'm just so excited to speak with you here today. And so, first of all, how are you doing this morning?
Doing well. Another Saturday morning. Been up early, doing a little work, but just ready to dive in and see what this has for us.
That is great to hear. And so, before we get started, are we able to take a moment for you to go ahead and introduce yourself for those who are watching or listening here today?
Yeah, I am Darwin Mills. Currently live in Newport News, Virginia. Lifelong educator. Worked for Newport News Public Schools for almost 31 years. Retired in September and accepted a full-time position at Regent University in Virginia Beach. Those who'll be watching video-wise, I'm representing my undergraduate, North Carolina Central University. 1910 is when we were actually started as a historically black college and university, HBCU. So I always take the opportunity to represent them in any capacity that I can. And any young person who's listening, you should consider this a wonderful university. And I grew up in Lenore, North Carolina, which is in the mountains of North Carolina.
Well, that is great to hear. And I'm just, like I said, so excited to speak with you this morning. Yeah, and so I guess I'll actually start by asking, so what really actually started you on your journey to become an educator? Is this something that you had always wanted to do, or did this start off in college?
Yeah, it's a great question. Unfortunately, so many people are discouraged from being educators because they don't think they make a lot of money. But really, it dates back to actually second and third grade. I didn't grow up with my father in my home, so I had my first male teacher, second and third grade. Folks do ask some time about, race and color. He was actually a white male. His name was Tim Rain. So as early as 7, 8, 9 years old, I started to emulate him without even really, realizing it. That continued through middle school. Didn't have as many male teachers there. Only had one. Actually, had my first African American male teacher in sixth grade, Larry Bailey. Went on to high school. Even though I was a mathematics major, a lot of people in these day and age, what I'm about to say, they'll be like, wow, I didn't get to take Algebra 1 until ninth grade, which a lot of students, take in seventh and eighth grade. So in the ninth grade, I had another male teacher. He was the valedictorian of Duke University when he was in college. He was my Algebra 1 teacher. So what happens on the midterm exam, ninth grade year, Algebra 1, I make a 100 on the exam. And Mr. Duncan makes this big deal about it in terms of, he said in his 14 years of teaching at that particular time, I may have been like the second person to have a perfect score on any of his tests or exams. And it just gave me this ultimate confidence. So from that point on, I became a mathematics tutor for my peers, even chemistry, the quantitative side. And I just loved it. But when I went on to college, I still was afraid of declaring that major. And folks, again, had talked me out of it. So what happens is I declared just a regular mathematics major. And for those who understand the mathematics in different jobs, I was studying to be an actuary, so a mathematician for insurance companies. And I did work toward that. But after my fourth year, I actually said, no, I really want to teach. So I went back to a fifth year of undergrad to complete all the requirements to be a teacher. So in essence, I tutored throughout high school, tutored throughout college, and it was just my nature. Although I made a lot more money being an actuary, I really enjoyed teaching people mathematics. It just became a passion of mine. So in essence, the seed was planted when I was 7 years old, but it did not really fertilize until I was around 21 and 22, and I finally made that decision that I was going to go forth and do what I felt I was destined to do.
That is great to hear, and I love that that the teachers throughout your life help play a significant part of that, and it really comes to show truly the importance of not just education but the educators that that help teach you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely have to give them, and my mother as well. But yeah, just formally, yeah, the different ones who were there to impact me. There's more, but those particular ones stand out to me.
Yeah, and so going back to something that you mentioned, that that's really when you had your first male teacher, and sort of the are you able to speak a bit about the importance of that to you as someone who didn't grow up having a father in the household?
Yeah, of course, at the time, I didn't know that's what was happening, that impact. But so it's the little things like that that no matter what, sometimes a man can teach a man bad things too, but you really need a model to be able to see those types of things. Just, in my opinion, no, we've changed through time, but at the end of the day, it was something important for me. And again, I didn't even know the impact of it until I was much older and really reflected. At that time, no idea. But when I do look back over the course of my life and reflect, it had a profound impact on me in a positive way. I was only able to see Mr. Rain maybe one or two more times. When I was in high school, we actually went back to my elementary school. My elementary school was a K through 3 at the time. We had a separate 4 through 5, but we were able to go back, and I was able to sing with my high school choir and back at the elementary school, and then get a chance to talk to him. Of course, he was proud to see my growth. And even a little bit later, I tried to find him to let him know the impact that he had on me, and the fact of, again, putting it together later. I'm going to keep saying this. I didn't know all this when I was younger. It just took me a while once I got into college to really reflect and understand that like I said, that impact that he had.
Well, I'm glad at least that you were able to help make that connection later on and be able to speak with him, because I always believe that that's just such a, I don't know, to me that's something I always like doing, like whenever I am able to see one of my former teachers again and just sort of let them know like what I've been doing and the impact that they help make within my life, whether a small one or big one. And yeah, I feel like that's just such an important part of development and growing up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so by the time that I said that you made it to college and you wanted to study mathematics, first of all, I guess how was your decision made as to where you wanted to to go to college, and and that whole process?
Yeah, it's kind of unique. My mother actually graduated from this college as well in 1967. Being honest, she actually didn't steer me that way. She was steering me away from it. However, I had a first cousin named Leroy. My mother's name is Victoria, but Leroy was there, and Leroy graduated in 1985 from the college that I started attending in 1986. So what happens? He's still in the area, and I visited him a couple times. So long story short is he kind of pushed when I put my application in. He talked to the lady that was the head of admissions, and he, myself, my mom, we just worked with that lady. I was actually one of the first four seniors accepted at my college my senior year, like literally, so say incoming freshman, the first four. We had turned in my application in like October, November. A lot of students wait. We did it very early. My mother was very astute to those types of things. So what was the holdup? It was I waiting on a scholarship, and financially it was really tough for us. So I was blessed. I actually received an academic scholarship to attend. So that's really what propelled it. But it's really, I have to say, all due, not all, but mostly due to my cousin pushing in because he had been a graduate of there. And of course, I had a decent amount of grades, 3.52 unweighted GPA. A lot of students have weighted. We didn't have the weighted back there, so 4.0 was the highest. So to graduate at 3.52 and have a good amount of service, community service, different, like a well-rounded, experienced athlete, music, those types of things, I think really propel me. And before I forget, our college did become a legacy. I have a pretty small family, but my mother had attended in 1967. My cousin Leroy, again, graduated in 1985. Then his sister, year behind me, follows me, and another first cousin. We were there together. So we graduated in 1991 and 1992, respectively. So five of us went through this college, and that's in, five doesn't sound like a lot, but if you know the small number of my family, most of us attended North Carolina Central. That actually went to a four-year college.
That is so great that you all were able to have a family impact and legacy there. I mean, that's so cool that you all have that sort of shared experience.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you had
Very
mentioned.
proud of it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, no, I said very proud of it. Very proud. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you mentioned too that you were a student athlete too.
Yeah, but that was high school, and still the same. I played everything when I was younger: soccer, football, baseball, basketball. Whatever we could find to keep ourselves positively busy. But in high school, I did focus on basketball. By no means was a superstar, but I did play a quality role. Our senior team was one of the best teams to ever be in our high school. Actually, we were inducted into our school Hall of Fame a few years back. So I was able to see my friends go back for that. But that really gave me some outside discipline. So when I actually started teaching in Newport News, I coached as well, coached basketball at now defunct Ferguson High School, which is where CNU is taken over. So the Ferguson Performing Arts Center, for those of you familiar with Newport News, that initial building used to be Ferguson High School. So that's where I first started teaching. I was a varsity assistant coach in the JV basketball coach for 2 years for the men's side. And then I coached women, a little bit at Heritage High School when it first opened with my colleague, Dr. Darwin Ford. And also we coached AAU basketball together for Boo Williams. So all those things, just kept me involved in young people's lives, as well as kept me around stuff I was passionate about, which is mathematics and sports, and then also music were my three pillars that kept me connected to school.
That's so great that you were able to, to do that and sort of almost, I guess in that sense, full circle of how you did all of these, sports back in high school, but then being able to coach it when you were teaching in high school.
Oh yeah, so just a great segue. And as we were talking about earlier, the different people who impact your life, I wanted to be able to do the same thing. That's why you get in it. And I do want to make this point, never know where these conversations are going, but aside from homeschool, everyone, no matter how successful they've been, whatever they do, had a teacher or teachers. So I think sometimes society misses that when they're not as in tune and giving our profession its due. Everybody, 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 even homeschool, because you had your parents, had a teacher. And I think folks forget that sometimes, and they should not lessen this profession. It is a great profession, very honorable, and very important. I know with artificial intelligence things going on right now, there's no substitute for having actual teachers in your life.
100%. Yeah. Education is just such an important field, and I wish it would get, like we were saying, like, the more credit that it deserves, because it's just such an important part and helps lay the, both the foundations for us to grow in the future, but also, the educators there are also there to help us grow, whether formal or informal. And it plays such an important part within helping us learn who we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you mentioned that that when you started off teaching that you were at Ferguson High School and then Heritage High School, and so I guess how long did you stay there between those two schools?
Well, actually, there was one in between. So I did start at Ferguson, 1991. I I didn't get a chance to mention. Remember, I said I didn't grow up with a father in my household, but it wasn't for the reasons that a lot of things happened. It just was a situation. So long story short, I finally reconnected with my father in 1993. and I have two sisters and a brother, and we all connected. But from that, I wanted to get to know my father. So a short stint of time, he lived in Milwaukee at the time, and still does. I moved to Milwaukee in 1995 to teach there for a little bit and to just be with him. But I decided to come back to Newport News after a semester. It just didn't work out. We still have a relationship. That's not it. But I didn't really want to live in Milwaukee. I went there really just to get to know him. So I came back actually as a substitute. That's the only thing I could be for the last year that Ferguson was open. So Ferguson closed in 1996. So the very next year I got my full teaching position back, but we went to Warwick High School, at least I did. So that was the year Heritage and Woodside opened. But I didn't have a choice of school, so the principal at Ferguson went to Warwick, so he told me that's where I was going. So I actually worked at Warwick up until 2000. In my last year at Warwick, I was actually teacher of the year for Warwick High School, so I'm so very proud of that. But I got a promotion to be the lead teacher, or what's called the department chair for Heritage's math department. So being honest, I may have never have gone to Heritage had I not got that promotion, for lack of a better term. And simultaneously, what was happening was I had finished my Master's of Arts in Teaching from Christopher Newport University, which is right here in Newport News that we just talked about with the Ferguson connection. So I had that Master's, and I wanted to be able to start getting into a little bit of leadership. And at the same time, I also started teaching at Thomas Nelson Community College as an adjunct. All of that happened within the same year, which is now Virginia Peninsula Community College. But those things, just propelled me. So again, I taught at Ferguson, Warwick, then Heritage. Afterwards, actually, I've been doing administrative work since the year 2002.
Wow, that's definitely really interesting. And so I guess I actually have a two-part question for you. So, what initially made you teach in Newport News to begin with, and then after the time that you left, what made you want to come back to here out of anywhere that you could have gone?
So that's another good, funny question. The cousin that I mentioned, so Leroy again got me to North Carolina Central. His sister's name is Monica. Monica, at that time, was dating a young man who played football at Norfolk State. And she wanted to move to the area to be near him. So she received a job in Newport News. And just because she's my sister cousin, she told me to call the human resource director, which was Crawford Smith at the time. So I get him directly on the phone. Lo and behold, I was able to interview with him, a lady named Martha Askew, who's now deceased, unfortunately, and a man named Henry Godfrey, who's also now deceased, who are just great pillars of education in this area. Even Mr. Godfrey was on the school board in Hampton. Long story short, they hired me. I came here and lived with my cousin. So her and I lived together for 5 years, and she moved back to Charlotte. And by the way, she didn't marry that gentleman who she followed. He ended up getting a job in Charlotte, so she moved back closer to home. So I ended up staying, and I just loved the area, being honest. And I love what I was involved in and the things that I could do. So I just felt no need to leave. I know I left for that stint, but I want to be clear to share everybody it was for a personal reason that I really just wanted to try to get to know my father a little more. But the yearning for what myself, I couldn't live backwards. So he and I even made the right decision. We talked it out, and he felt it would be better for me also to come back and be somewhere where I was comfortable, and we could figure out our relationship from a distance. That's what we've been able to accomplish, with that situation.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you like the area, and that certainly is a interesting story of how you made it here to start with. But but several years later, you're still here. So I'm definitely can see that you really enjoy being here within this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you said, there's always opportunities, but it just settled in. And actually, when I came back from Milwaukee too, within a year, I ended up getting married. So it's kind of quick. But my wife Tammy and I have been together 25, almost 26 years. So things just worked out, and we just decided to really settle down and definitely make this our roots.
Well, that is great to hear. And first of all, congratulations on 25, almost 26 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so, yeah. And so you mentioned too that, around that time that you came back a couple years later that you also got into leadership and everything, and slowly making your your way up. And so at that time, did you really, I guess, have a, I suppose, like destination in mind as in terms of how far you wanted to go with leadership, or was it just taking it one step at a time, or how was that process for you?
For me, it's always been one step at a time. And I say this to anybody listening, young people, you should have a 3 to 5 year plan. You really should. Unfortunately for me, I just didn't do it that way. And I tell folks that, well, we all have different journeys. I think it's important to plan, but I really didn't have a destination. But one of the big things I left out about my dad, because I didn't want it to be so much about him with this talk. But when I met him, he was actually the superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools. So even though he didn't have the traditional track in education that I have, it's hard not to look at someone, and even though you weren't around them, still admire and say, hey, I wonder if one day I could do that, even though it's a very stressful job. But the long story short with that is I just kept pushing, and I just allowed things to kind of unfold. I do have faith. I do believe in God, and I believe in He directed our paths. So there's a quote by Whitney Young, and sometimes I have to paraphrase it because I get going and I won't state it correctly, but it goes like this. It is better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. So that became one of my mottos, is that I'm going to be prepared if these opportunities happen. They just do. And I feel deeply that's what has happened for me. I've been really fortunate in some of the jobs that I've had, and they generally are just opportunities there at the time. So that one day at a time type of philosophy has been mine. But I do believe in folks setting goals, 3 to 5 year plans and that type of thing. Because if you don't, sometimes then you don't know how to get prepared. But just for me, since I stayed in education, having a master's and then eventually getting a doctorate in actually educational leadership. So that gives me even more variety. So I can work in mathematics, but I also can work in educational leadership. So it's twofold, because I have the master's gave me the content that I need to be able to work in mathematics education, but also have a doctorate in educational leadership, so I can again work across both subject matters or genre. Yeah, I would say subject matters. Most people, how they understand it, both disciplines. I can do both.
Well, that is great to hear. And so, out of curiosity, I guess, what really helped drive you to know that you wanted to accomplish a doctorate and go the extra mile?
I always want to give people credit. The lady's name is Cheryl Hennig. She was one of my professors, became my advisor when I was in really a principal preparation program through the University of Virginia, UVA. And we did our satellite. So classes were in Virginia Beach. And then eventually I ended up taking classes in Richmond. I only had to go to campus for my dissertation class. But she actually, without knowing, she just kind of pushed me. She said, why don't you consider it? So after about 2 or 3 classes of just my preparation to be an administrator or principal, I ended up going full steam into the doctoral program. After that, it really is, how do you say it? Just stick-to-itiveness and just going through it and doing it. There's so many people who are ABD. And ABD, for those who don't know, is all but dissertation. So they've done all this coursework. I was there. I hit the wall. And another unfortunate situation that actually became a motivation for me. My father-in-law passes away in February of 2009. He's a gentleman that didn't have past a middle school education, but he was an entrepreneurial. He and his wife, my wife's family, they opened a used car lot in Alamogordo, New Mexico. And he just taught them just truly how to work and still be positive citizens, but he pushed them into education. So all the talks we had up until that time that I got to know him, when he passed away, it just hit me. I felt like I was leaving crumbs on the table. And after his death, I again, praying through this, I literally started writing in March. So a month after I started writing, got back with my dissertation committee, and I was done by June. So I defended that summer. And I point back, even though my mom was always there, she was pushing, but I really point back. His death, although a sad thing, inspired me to push past this ABD and get it done. And I really have to say that because that's exactly when it happened. And I was able to finish, like I said, about 3 to 4 months later.
Wow. Well, that's really interesting to to hear that the impact that it made on you, and you can definitely tell like how meaningful the conversations that you did have with him, were to you, and how this really helped push you to go to the next level. And so I guess continuing on, like, how was it for you to eventually move out of the day-to-day classroom and go into to leadership over the course of your transition?
Initially, like everything, I was excited. First couple months, you kind of miss it. And I've transitioned in and out of building in different roles. The first thing you miss is the buzz of the students and the chatter and the school environment. There's moments of that are negative, unfortunately, because you have the discipline issues sometimes. But the true buzz and that everyday being able to impact you feel directly. When you go to leadership, especially I was outside the building, so you feel like you're indirectly impacting. It's supposed to be direct, but it's real more indirect. Policies, curriculum, those types of things. But still, that teacher has to implement, and you can't always control that. That's why I call it indirect. So that was one thing I did miss, is that I always felt like you came into my classroom, I can teach you this mathematics. You can learn. I don't care if you resisted. I just always felt like I had control of that. But as a leader, it's more influence. Yeah, I can evaluate and all that, but it's bigger than that. I still can't deliver the instruction to that student. I can give you best practices, ideas, go help you get proper training, all of that stuff. But I still cannot deliver the instruction for you. I can't manage a classroom. So again, that's why I say I can only indirectly help that situation. Whereas when I had that, 150 students a year, whatever the class 5 classes, about close to 30, that I felt full control and that it was on me, and I was directly in charge and able to positively impact the situation.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear all of this. And so I guess what was the approach that you took from being being a teacher within the classroom?
You said the approach, just what? That's what I make sure. The approach I took as I was teaching.
Yes.
Okay. Well, as a teacher, man, this is a show. Come on, I don't know. Folks sit down. I just was never one of those people. I mean, I stood up the whole time unless we were having a test. Now, there's some good and bad to that too, because as any job, things have evolved and we do need to change. So I was the one tired, but what I learned later is, as a teacher, students need to do more. We're doing all the work. Students need to do some work. What I mean by that is, it's not that you don't still stay there and facilitate and involve yourself, but we do need to back up sometimes and allow some of what they call agency now, allow them some choice and that type of thing. And it wasn't that, but I always said too, if you're a gifted lecturer, then lecture. If you're not, then you have to come up with different ways to ensure. As long as my students were engaged, or I felt they were engaged, that was the most important part for me. But it was sage on stage in my mind. If it took me standing on my desk, not saying I did it, but if that's what it took, I would have done that. Just excitement, humor, all those things that I felt like to try to engage students. And you become a better teacher, being honest, when you leave the classroom, because then you're like learning stuff. Oh, I wish I had done this, done that. If you're following the change, the evolution of our field, is different now. I know the way I did it from 91 to 2002, I don't feel like those same strategies would necessarily work now. I really don't, being honest. Some would, but overall, I would have to evolve and go along with what I've seen differently from like an administrative or supervisory role in how you relate to students. I always felt like I had strong relationship skills, really strong. That's one of the things I felt like I did well, but I still know I would have to change kind of my instructional methodology to ensure that I'm reaching today's student.
Yeah, I completely get that, especially in regards to how, I mean, just how many changes even have happened between then and now, even like technological changes. You know, definitely so much stuff that has impacted, and learning's definitely a little different, but nevertheless, though, I definitely see the impact that you were making within within your community. In fact, even doing my research before speaking with you today, I found yeah numerous articles speaking about how great of a instructor you are, and like one of them in particular, from I believe 2011, even mentioning that that you help show people, like really like help make mathematics engaging and wanting people to to actually learn it, and everyone wishing that you were their math teacher.
Probably sounds like some Thomas Nelson stuff that you found there. Rate your professors. I remember some of those. Never, I mean, I would never say I have 100%. Anywhere I've been, there's always going to be one or two that just don't like the style. But for me, it's just, I mean, it's mathematics and it's just beautiful. I know those maybe see over my corner. It's just a thing I still have up. Marvelous Math was the hook, was a presentation I gave many years back. But I keep that even in my home office as just a reminder. That's still a passion. Leadership has become really my life on the back end, but the passion will never leave for mathematics and the purity of teaching algebra. Algebra 2 was like my favorite, college algebra. Those were my favorites. Trigonometry, some too. Geometry is that's like a different language, like French to Spanish. You know it, but it's just a language because it's proofs and theorems and things you have to have a book to fully, engage and memorize. But the purity of algebra and how it's embedded really throughout our lives, that was something always exciting to be an instructor of.
Well, that's really great that you've been able to to do that, and I certainly was gonna ask about that, since I could see that. So I'm glad you explained that. And in reference to the article, so I went ahead and looked it back up. So this one is from the Marsden Center, in Virginia Beach.
Got it. So that was one. Okay, so that's kind of how I got to Regent. So I had a friend named Jenny Sue Flanagan. I'll say call people friends, colleague. She's still a professor there as well. She had me help her teach the elementary math portion. She did the science for budding teachers at that time, back in 2008. That was my first connection with Regent. Then she was over what was called the Marsden Center for like teacher development. I forget the exact name, but she would have me come. Sometimes I spoke to young people, other times to educators. So that actually got me going. And then, like I said, then I started teaching those classes at Regent.
That's so interesting how how this almost like like you said, like helped get you almost to where you are, and I guess the long game sort of sense.
Yes, it's definitely a long game. 31 years is really not that long, but it is, in a particular profession. But still feel like there's people who've done 40, 50 years, same thing. I'll be blessed in a few weeks, April 18th, I'll be turning 55. It's a big number because I'm sitting there like I can't believe it. Still feel, very young of mind. And 55, those listening to, we're still good to go. 55 is a new 35, all the stuff, cliches that people throw out. I still think it's the same 55. It's just that, we've had some good exposure, just great opportunities, job-wise. I'm super blessed from that perspective. Headaches, stress along the way, but when you really can slow your brain down and reflect, it's been an awesome ride and still is one. The stress is, for me, always is that I wanted excellence and still do. So oftentimes it's self-inflicted stress because you just want to do well. But if you slow the brain down and recognize that you're putting too much pressure on your own self, still do what you're capable of, do it the best you can, and things, really do take care of themselves. But it's hard when you're in it. Again, if that excellence and kind of the standard that you've set for yourself, and you want folks to I don't know. I hate to say it's about everybody liking you. It's not so much that, but you want people to feel appreciated, and you want to give them your best and give them opportunities to be great as well. That you can impact.
Yeah, I love that, and I love how you are always working to make sure that people are appreciated and know that they are appreciated, that they're welcome, and yeah, and that they're able to see the impact that they make. And yeah,
Absolutely, my friend.
yeah, and I actually did want to, before I ask about your current position at Regent, I actually did want to go back a little. And so, up until your recent, I believe, September 2022 retirement from Newport News Public School. So, how was it for you being at the principal position?
Oh yeah, the principal position for me was definitely another unique opportunity. Just to give a backdrop so people understand, I was the principal of the alternative school, and alternative has that negative connotation. I refuse to call it that. I always called it the opportunity school. Ours was set up because there's different ones throughout the nation. The ways ours was set up was for the students who were either long-term suspended, expelled, or had serious community charges. So it was more like a discipline or behavioral school is how people look at it. But it's just an opportunity to stay on track, especially for the high school students, middle as well, but high school, because we ensured that they still were able to earn credits toward their graduation. That was the most important part for me. But let me back up to a reason why I say that. Some people, or the reason why I bring up this principalship, most of principals, what we call more traditional school, where it was, I was actually the discipline officer / hearing officer for 5 years prior to that. So I was the one sending them to Enterprise Academy. So for me finally to reverse the role and take over the school that I had been assigning students, for lack of a better term, due to that particular role, it definitely was unique. I was always close to the two principals prior to me because I had to work with them when I assigned students. But you still don't understand it until then you run it. Then I started seeing some of the challenges they were facing when we would have these conversations, and I couldn't quite understand, what's the holdup on getting the student enrolled, or what's all these different things that go into it. But also at our school, we serve four other school districts. We served York County, Williamsburg, Poquoson, and Hampton. So juggling those things and ensuring that we were able to meet the needs with a smaller staff, less actual opportunities per se. We couldn't match class for class always. So sometimes a student would have to withdraw from a class they were in into a traditional setting, and we would just find a good elective, the best match we could, or we would put them in. It was called Novanet at one time, Grad Point, now it's Edgenuity, the online program, so that they could stay again on track to graduate. So it's a lot of little things that some folks always hear small, but you're trying to juggle. In the rooms themselves, 10 students in one of those rooms, they're almost touching knees. It's just how small the physical space. A little bit less resources, but great people. So it's not necessarily that it's negative, but it's smaller, and you really have to do so many things that you used to have a big team to do at your traditional place. Smaller team, but you still had to implement some of the same strategies, mission, vision, whatever was going on in the school district. So you still have to do those things, but with alternative mindset, but I'm still saying opportunity. And one thing that I pushed when I first got there, our students are not at risk, that people call them, they're at promise. And that's a term from an author and educator named Lisa Delpit. So it wasn't a term I came up with, but it's one that I really loved and admired. And you just keep changing the terminology. There aren't bad students, just opportunities to be better, made bad choices, those types of things, all about changing the concept and the mindset. we just turn words, positive words, push the positivity. Of course, things happen, but none of these young people are, not all of them are just horrible individuals. Not that. Just made some very poor decisions. So I kind of got off track with your original question, but the principleship of alternative is definitely just different, than your traditional settings.
Yeah, well, I'm really engaged with how you approach things and how you work to change the traditional mindset of yeah, I guess how people think of certain things. And I love that you were able to phrase it to show that there are opportunities, that and that it's almost a time for a somewhat like a second chance, and being able to continue working towards your goals even despite circumstances.
Absolutely. And it was the approach before me. But, I just felt like when I came in, I wanted to push that forward even more. That make no mistake that anybody comes to our little isolated facility, that our students are, here to be academically successful and, to change some social emotional things as well. But we wanted to ensure that everybody knew that we were still trying to help them reach their end game.
Well, that is good to hear. And I guess by the time that you had officially retired and begun your transition into the college level, what would you say is sort of the impact that you helped leave by the time that you retired?
Well, the impact for the school, I still check in on them probably a little bit. Some of them say too much, others like not enough. But I have met the new principal there, and he's reached out to me on a few occasions. So I try to stay and give. I hate to say advice, but whatever he's asked, just want to be supportive, because you leave places and folks think you're just supposed to just drop it. I just feel like I've developed relationships with people. I'm not going to stop knowing them or talking to them because I don't work with them anymore. But it's just a different scenario. But going over to the college itself, has been another unique challenge. Um, I bring a practitioner aspect to the job, which I think is positive, but it's a learning curve for me as well. We're in the middle of some accreditation work, and even my dean and others said it's one of the oddest times for someone to start as a full-time, and I'm a director of my leadership and mathematics education program. So I walked actually into a lot. So I haven't been able to teach as many classes yet, but it's catching up. I've had to do a lot of programmatic work, but this particular 8-week session, that's kind of how we do things, and sometimes 15 weeks. I do have 3 classes, so that's the most. I'm playing catch up, but I'm also trying to get our program aligned for the different accreditors. We have 2 different accreditations. One is called CATE, other one is SACS. And then we also have BDOE deliverables as well. So we're in the middle of all of that, and we're all praying, a little stressed the past few weeks, just trying to get to May and June to ensure that we've set our programs up for, national accreditation and local. So, we're on track, but it's still, some work.
Wow. And so you mentioned a little bit earlier how one of the opportunities that you had several years ago sort of helped lead the way for you to go to Regent. But I guess for you, like, I don't know, did this feel like a natural evolution, or how did you end up actually finding out about this position?
Yeah, my assistant dean and I had stayed in touch with each other throughout. So, we kind of dovetail or talked about it a little bit, but not directly. So I started adjuncting at Thomas Nelson, like I mentioned, in 2000. I kind of did that off and on until 2015. 2008, I started what I call a rapport with Regent, just doing a little bit with that one class and that Martinson Center. But in 2011, what happened was this program that I'm now the director of started at Regent, and there were 9 students from Virginia Beach in a cohort. I wasn't the original professor. There was some lady who was doing it, professor. She had to back out, and they were literally stuck without a professor. And because I had that rapport, I was asked to just step in, and I finished them out, basically. and they were able to be that first cohort of this program. So lo and behold, the next semester, there was no students because that was the only cohort. I was just asked to write syllabi just to kind of build a program. So I did that and had it sitting. Right after I wrote them, the very next semester, they had more students. So I really started adjuncting for the leadership and mathematics education program. And as an adjunct, I was the pseudo program chair, the whole gamut, all the way up until 2017. But what was stated is that an adjunct can't be the program director or the program chair. That's kind of what happened. So I had hired another adjunct from Florida because we were moving from a face-to-face, by the way, to a more of a hybrid and online. So I had become the principal at Enterprise within all that. So long story short, I finally stepped away because it was becoming too much. But I had already been connected. So from 27 on, every year or so, someone from Regent would still reach out and just more tongue in cheek. Would you be willing one day, to come teach here? And I was like, yeah, I'll think about it. But I'm also on the downhill of my retirement. I'm not giving up those years to step into private or whatever. I wanted to make at least 30 years. And wasn't looking for it, but it kind of came back to me again. Just a conversation like we're having right now turned into apply, pray about it a little bit, talk to spouse and different ones, and it just hit at a time, and just took that leap of faith and jumped into it. Because deep down, years back, I would have said I wanted to end as a college professor. I know we have a little lag I see on my internet end, but yeah. So I wanted to. I would have said possibly if I had like a job to end with, it would probably be a college professor. So that's back to that. I said I don't have a 3 to 5 year plan, but it was always in the back of my mind because I do love to instruct.
Well, that is so interesting to hear that it all sort of worked out and how it wasn't necessarily anything that you had per se actively sought out, but just sort of something that just sort of worked out, and here we are today.
And any of the enterprise people listen, I told them they don't believe me. I was planning to be there. I really was, and like I said, this came up, and I had to consider it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad at least that you are able to have this opportunity. And so, are you able to tell us a little bit, about the program that you are, now the chair of for Regent University?
So I work for the School of Education itself. So I mentioned about the educational leadership doctorate that I do have. So I do have to teach courses in other departments to meet what's called my student credit hours. But that being said, the Leadership and Math Ed program is preparing current teachers to be leaders in mathematics, either at the school level or the building level. I'm sorry, or the central office level, my apology. So I have had both experiences in my life. I was a lead teacher, again, at Heritage High School many years back, and I was the mathematics supervisor in Portsmouth and in Newport News, respectively. So I didn't mention the Portsmouth. That was only a year as well, but different opportunities have always, like I said, presented themselves, and I just moved when I needed to move. So I was Portsmouth's mathematics supervisor, but Newport News, again, got me back because then it gave me my first building level administrative experience, which is really what I was really pushing to do before I did anything else, but just kind of how things work. So back to this program. The program gives candidates, when they finish, either a master's of education or an educational specialist. They can earn either one. And then they can apply for what's called the mathematics specialist endorsement that the VDOE, Virginia Department of Education, offers. Then from there, many of them do apply for jobs to be a math coach, mathematics specialist, coordinator, supervisor, whatever the titles are in the various divisions. But lo and behold, really, we have a lot of students right now. Most of our students are from out of state. So Georgia is a predominant one, Alabama, different places where South Carolina, they're also utilizing the degree, which is called Leadership in Mathematics Education, to propel their careers as well. So we're very happy for that as well.
Well, I'm so glad that that you were even given this opportunity, and it sounds like you're gonna take it and run with it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and so like I've said before, this has just been such an enjoyable conversation. So it's been so great to really take like a deep dive into, your career and everything in between from from all the way, like you said, with your first male teacher, all the way to where you are now a educator. I believe now 31 years.
Yep. And yeah, this year 32, but yeah, 31 when I left. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and so I guess over these next few years, especially in your new position, what are some of the hopes that you have for yourself?
Continue to build the program for one, but realistically, what I haven't done is research and those types of things, which is a pillar of higher ed. So I do want to finally settle down after they always said take this first year, get to know things, but get into publishing articles, um, get into some more. I've been on a couple panels, research really the passion that I have for education, and be able to put out some information that hopefully will be helpful for those across our country and maybe even our world, but just be another person that adds value and information to our profession. But really deep down, always my ultimate goal is just to help people, and those who come entrusted through our program want to deliver some information, give advice and experiences that I've been blessed to have that hopefully will make them successful. And what we got to realize too is I've never been a person that thought I knew everything. My goal was always to encourage you, even I'll never forget teaching this young man at Heritage High School who was in my Algebra 2 trig class, so honors Algebra 2 as a ninth grader. Super talented. He was already programming the calculators. That was a big thing, using the TI-84s or 83s, whatever the number was at that time. And I would try to get him, but he didn't write well. But I remember telling Jane, I said, look, I really feel strongly. You're going to know more mathematics than me at some point in your life, but right now you don't. So I need you to stop playing with that calculator and pay attention. But where I'm headed with that is sometimes we've just had experiences, and that's what I'm saying. So folks who are getting there, they haven't had the experience yet, but you can see the talent, the ideas they have. So you're just like, all I can do is help foster that, but give you some advice, show you some ways. You have to get through these programs sometime to get that. Some people call it box checking. You can say all that, but at the end of the day, there's some value in all of this journey. There's some things you may not have thought about, even as talented as you are. Are you prepared to handle this situation, that situation when it comes up? Just because we, others have been through that. So I think that's where we're more of a benefit. So that's really the ultimate. That's what I want more than anything. But at the end of the day, I have to do those other things too. Like I said, the research, those things. There's some excitement in that as well. But the real excitement is seeing our candidates, students, however people want to call them, when they graduate from our program, that they, again, are professionally successful down the road.
I absolutely, love that, and yeah, and that's just such a great story, and even from the sounds of it too, is that you all could also learn a little bit from each other as well.
Absolutely, and that's the key to all of this is, and it's hard sometimes. They think college professors, they know everything. They're not going to listen. No, it's not about that. This is going to help people again understand the education field. Everything we do, if we really think about slow down, it can impact another generation. So we can't be so caught up and egg-headed to where we're not collaborating more to make things better for everyone. That's really the ultimate goal. At the end of the day, why else are you in the profession? If you're just in it for some accolades, I just don't understand. It's not the profession for that.
That is quite true, and yeah, like I said, this has just been such a great conversation, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. And I hope that everyone watching or listening just took as much from this as I did, because it's just such a impactful conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, Brandon, and success to you. Your brother, your mom, dad, and your whole family. Continued success. But I appreciate you and proud of you being a Newport News graduate and doing great things in college and what have you. So definitely continued success for you as well.
I greatly appreciate that. Yeah, and for anyone who is watching or listening, who would like to, continue keeping up with you, do you have any, social media pages that you would like to share? If not, that's quite all right as well.
Educator Mills, you know how to find me, so I put it in that particular posting. But yeah, that's the only one I'm really on. I do have a LinkedIn page as well. Need to actually get more involved in that one. Just don't do the other social media. That's just my preference. I'll joke. I have a sneaky IG, but I don't even really utilize that at all. But I am active on Twitter and a little bit on LinkedIn.
Well, I hope everyone, who is watching and listening, is sure to, go follow Dr. Mills on, on Twitter. And last but not least, though, I did want to ask for anyone who is listening and is inspired by, by what you had to say. What would you like to leave people with, closing out this episode?
Whew, that's a heavy question. My main quote that I didn't introduce earlier is John Dewey. Education is not a preparation for life. Education is life itself. That's truly what I've kind of lived by. And you talked about this earlier, formally and informally, because sometimes we get so caught up in the formal. But again, if you say, I don't need college out there, I'm with you. You may not. You may need to go and just get an industry cert, whatever. Still within all that, I'm going to run my own business. Still, education is it. Whether you're reading your own book, doing whatever, there's no way you just know this stuff. Somebody, again, is teaching you. You're learning it from somewhere. That's education. We get caught up sometimes, again, assuming formal words, but you have to be educated to do anything in this world. Simple as that. Call it whatever you want to call it. Education is not a preparation for life. Education is life itself. We just hope formal is sometimes the way you approach a lot of things because it will usually open more doors for you. So just keep pushing, have that dream and vision. But at the end of the day, you need some education.
Thank you so much. Those were definitely some great words, and I hope that you all watching, just took as much from this as I did. But for those of you, still tuned in, thank you all so much for listening, and I greatly appreciate being able to do this. But until next time, have a wonderful day, everyone, and let's make things happen. I'll see y'all later. Take care. Are you interested in having your own podcast station? Well, be sure to check out our sponsor, Podpage, for all of your podcasting needs to help promote your podcasting journey. If you're interested in checking out some of our productive multitasking merch or would like to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch at merch.tanssonmedia.com. Thank you so much for all your support.